East New York, Brooklyn, 1955. Henry watches the local gangsters from his bedroom window, believing their life is better than the president's. After school, he works at a cab stand run by Tutti Vario, who works for his mob boss brother Paulie. His parents are initially pleased, but soon worry about his growing involvement. His father, believing American kids are spoiled, is furious when he receives a letter about Henry skipping school and beats him. Despite the punishment, Henry remains committed to the cab stand. Tutti and other gangsters kidnap the mailman to stop further school notices. Henry becomes more immersed in the criminal world. The gangsters barbecue in the backyard. Henry's voiceover explains how many rely on Paulie for protection, comparing the organization to law enforcement. Later, Henry helps Tutti set fire to a used car lot, reflecting on his changed life. No lines at the bakery, neighborhood respect, and plenty of money at just 13. His mother is shocked by his gangster appearance when kids carry her groceries. A man runs to the pizzeria where Henry is standing, shouting he's been shot. Tutti tells Henry to keep him out. Henry finds a chair, wraps the man's hand, and calls for help. Tutti scolds him for wasting aprons. Later at the cab stand, Henry describes this period as a golden age for gangsters, before the Appalachian meeting and Crazy Joey's war. He meets Jimmy Burke, a generous young gangster. Paulie introduces them when Jimmy asks Henry for a drink. Henry narrates Jimmy's formidable reputation, built on hijacking and a strange generosity that earns him respect and fear. The police become his partners. Jimmy and Tommy unload stolen cigarettes from a hijacked truck, helping a crossing guard load her car. As she drives away, Jimmy introduces Tommy to Henry. A police car arrives, and Jimmy gives the officer cigarettes before they leave. Henry sells cigarettes when undercover detectives arrest him. A mob lawyer secures his release. Jimmy praises him for not snitching, handing him cash. Paulie and the gang celebrate. By 1955, Henry narrates how his crew stole extensively from Idlewild Airport, aided by inside information. Paulie intimidated anyone causing trouble. Inside Sonny's Bamboo Lounge, they discuss business. Frenchie, an Air France worker, talks to Henry about a large incoming shipment. When Sonny mentions Tommy's tab, Tommy smashes a bottle over his head. Sonny asks Paulie to become a partner to manage the chaos. Paulie agrees, but bleeds Sonny dry, racking up bills and selling the stolen goods cheaply. They eventually burn the lounge down. Tommy asks Henry for help with a double date with Diana and her friend Karen. Henry agrees. Tommy is captivated by Diana, while Karen is bored. Henry leaves to meet Tutti, accidentally standing Karen up. They later reconcile and agree to another date. Henry impresses Karen's mother, claiming he's in construction. Henry and Tommy steal $420,000 from Air France. They give Paulie his share. Henry and Karen enjoy time at a beach club, meeting Karen's neighbor Bruce. At a nightclub, they receive champagne from Billy Daniels. Karen reflects on Henry's connections. Moms helps Karen with her schoolwork. The crew works Friday nights. At Marty Krugman's salon, Marty complains about Jimmy wanting more money. Jimmy attacks him. Karen calls. Bruce has attacked her. Henry rushes out and brutally beats Bruce with a gun. Henry and Karen marry in a small Jewish ceremony. Paulie and the crime family attend. Paulie gives Karen an envelope of cash. Other wise guys follow suit as Henry discreetly collects the money. At Karen's mother's house, her mother questions Karen about Henry's whereabouts and his character. Karen defends him, but her mother insists that ordinary people don't live like Henry. Later, at a beauty party at Mickey's house, Karen listens as the other women discuss how they handle their husbands and children. She realizes their lifestyle is different from hers and wonders if she could live that way herself. Back at her mother's place, Karen voices her worries to Henry about him ending up in prison. Henry snaps back angrily, dismissing her fears, claiming only careless people get locked up. He reassures her that their illegal activities are just business. Over time, Karen begins to accept this lifestyle as a way for blue-collar men to earn extra money by bending the rules, viewing it as a means for ordinary men to make extra cash through dishonest means. Later, Henry and Tommy hijack a truck, forcing the driver into a car and driving off with the truck. Karen's voiceover describes their tight-knit crew sticking together through hospital visits and everyday life, despite their criminal dealings, and keeping outsiders at arm's length. She recounts how the police often harass them, trying to search their house, but most times just ask for bribes to stay quiet. At Henry's bar, a Gambino family wise guy named Billy Batts is celebrating his release from prison. After a fight, Henry and Jimmy kill him and stuff his body into a car trunk, heading to Tommy's house for a shovel. On the way, they hear banging from the trunk and discover Billy is still alive. Enraged, Tommy stabs him repeatedly until he dies. Henry's voiceover explains that killing a made man like Billy Batts was sensitive. They needed approval before doing so. The scene shifts to Sunday at Polly's house, where Henry, Karen, and the kids attend a family gathering. Polly asks Henry about the missing Billy Batts, whose disappearance is causing trouble. Henry assures him he's looked into it, but nobody knows what happened. Later, back at the nightclub, Jimmy tells Henry they have a problem. The buried body must be dug up because the property has been sold. Henry, Jimmy, and Tommy struggle with shovels, digging up the decomposed body. The smell is unbearable, and only Henry appears disturbed. While cleaning out his trunk, Karen asks about the smell, and Henry casually claims he hit a skunk. Later, Janice shows her new apartment to her friends. Henry narrates that he arranged for Janice to live nearby so he could visit her sometimes. He explains how Janice has been messing up at her job and that he had to straighten out her boss. In the kitchen, the crew plays cards while Spider, a young apprentice, serves drinks. Tommy, drunk, demands that Spider dance while shooting at his feet, but accidentally hits him in the foot. Spider is taken to a nearby doctor, and the card game continues. Karen, desperate to stop Henry from leaving, throws the car keys out the window, accusing him of lying and cheating on her. Henry, angry, throws a lamp at her but misses and leaves the house. During their next game, Spider returns with his foot bandaged. Tommy keeps taunting him, prompting Spider to tell him to go F himself. Jimmy praises Spider's bravery, mocking Tommy for taking the insult from a punk. Suddenly, Tommy pulls out a gun and shoots Spider 3 times in the chest, killing him. Furious, Jimmy warns Tommy that he's digging himself into a deeper hole. Karen shows up at Janice's apartment with her kids, screaming for her to open the door and stay away from Henry. She spends 2 hours ringing the doorbell, but Janice refuses to come out. Henry is awakened by Karen, who's holding a gun to his face, hysterically threatening to shoot him and his mistress. Despite her rage, Karen admits she can't bring herself to hurt Henry or leave him. Henry quickly ducks his head, grabs the gun, slaps Karen, and rushes out. At Janice's apartment, Polly and Jimmy tell Henry that Karen is very upset, and he needs to fix things. Henry is sent away for a few days with Jimmy to clear his head. During their trip, they beat up a man who owes them money, threatening to feed him to lions if he doesn't pay. When they return, they're arrested because the man's sister works for the FBI and has turned them in. They're convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Before going in, Henry shares a drink with his friends and reluctantly leaves the bar to surrender. In prison, Henry describes the lavish dinners they share, with everyone contributing, even Polly, who's doing a year for contempt. The mob members live comfortably, separate from the poor conditions of other inmates. Henry smuggles contraband in, including drugs like marijuana, heroin, and pills, to sell inside. During visiting hours, Karen arrives wearing an oversized coat, trying to sneak in more contraband. She notices Janice's name on the visitor list and confronts Henry, causing a scene. Upset and feeling abandoned, Karen talks about her struggles outside, Tommy's incarceration, and the lack of support from friends. Henry tries to reassure her, saying they need to look out for each other and forget everyone else. He shares a plan to sell drugs inside, insisting that if she keeps bringing in contraband, they'll be out in a month. Karen worries about the risks, especially if Polly finds out. Henry emphasizes they must help themselves and find a way out. They're forced to leave the prison, but are told to be cautious. Still upset, Karen tells Henry she doesn't want to hear about Janice anymore, and he promises he won't mention her again. After 4 years, Henry is finally released. Karen is there to pick him up, and they head back to her small, cramped apartment. Henry tells Karen to pack their belongings and start looking for a new place to live, mentioning he's owed money from a partnership and believes this is just the beginning of something bigger. They go to Polly's house for lunch, where Polly warns Henry to stay away from drugs and be cautious around Jimmy, whom he describes as wild and dangerous. Unbeknownst to Polly, Henry begins selling drugs again, using Robin's apartment as a base. He quickly finds success and brings Jimmy and Tommy into the operation. Later, Karen shows off their new house to friends Marty and Fran. Marty persuades Henry to take part in a once-in-a-lifetime robbery targeting Lufthansa, which could make them wealthy. In a mob hangout, all the wise guys involved in the heist gather to watch a basketball game. Each person has a specific role. Tommy and Sepe handle the outside guard, Frenchie and Joe Buddha corral the workers, and Fat Louie keeps them tied up away from alarms. During preparations, Henry has everyone working, including their old babysitter Judy Wicks, who helps transport drugs. At Robin's house, Henry prepares the stolen goods with Robin. While taking a shower, he hears a radio broadcast about the Lufthansa heist and the speculation about how much money he will spend on drugs, shocking him. The scene then shifts to a private Christmas celebration at Robert's Lounge, commemorating the robbery. Henry and Karen arrive, greeted by Jimmy. During the party, Fat Louie shows off a shiny new pink Cadillac convertible he bought for his wife Dolores as a wedding gift. Jimmy gets angry with Fat Louie, having warned everyone not to buy anything flashy since the police were watching. Fat Louie explains the car was bought with his mother's money and was stolen by the police. Henry is stunned by the news of the Cadillac and tells Mrs. CP to return her coat as a sign of respect. At the bar, he and Jimmy notice others flaunting new clothes and jewelry. Marty approaches them, demanding his cut of the heist money, but Jimmy ignores him. Henry tries to soothe Marty, promising to speak to Jimmy. Later, Jimmy gives Henry a small portion of the stolen money as a taste of the loot. Henry then brings home a large Christmas tree, giving everyone gifts and handing Karen a thick envelope of cash, telling her to buy something nice. Meanwhile, Stax is murdered by Tommy for failing to dispose of the truck from the Lufthansa heist, leaving evidence behind. Back at Robert's Lounge, the celebration continues, but Henry, worried about police investigations, wants to talk to Jimmy, who brushes off his concerns. Tommy joins them, and Jimmy reveals Polly has opened the books, and Tommy is about to become a made man. Henry is stunned, but congratulates Tommy. As they leave, Marty tries to speak with Jimmy, but Henry intervenes, assuring him he'll get his money. Later, outside Robert's Lounge, Marty confronts Jimmy and Tommy again. Jimmy agrees to talk to him, and as they get into the car, Tommy unexpectedly stabs Marty in the head. The scene shifts to Henry and Karen waking up to Fran, who's worried because Marty hasn't come home. Henry tries to calm her and promises to find him. Later, Jimmy and Henry discuss what to tell Fran about her missing husband, while Jimmy distracts 2 FBI agents following him. A series of grim discoveries unfold as bodies linked to the heist are found murdered. Despite this, Jimmy remains optimistic about Tommy's induction into the Mafia. However, Tommy is killed in retaliation for Billy Bat's murder, devastating Jimmy and Henry. On Sunday, January 11th, 1979, Henry begins his day by loading guns into his car and noticing a police helicopter. He needs to drop off guns at Jimmy's, pick up Michael from the hospital, and collect items for Judy. Jimmy is annoyed because the silencers don't fit and refuse to pay for the guns. Henry spots the helicopter again. After retrieving Michael, he starts dinner, planning to finish so he and Karen can handle the guns and prepare a package for Louise. At 11:30 a.m., Henry and Karen leave, noticing the helicopter. They hide the guns at Karen's mother's, then shop to divert attention. Later, they retrieve the guns and meet a dealer, who trades them for heroin. Henry plans to go home, prepare the package for Louise, and finish dinner. He calls home with instructions for Louise, but she carelessly reveals the package's destination to the police. He calls again to verify her flight details, worried about her carelessness. He returns home to cook while waiting for Louise. He tells his brother to watch the stove and goes to Sandy's to prepare the package. Louise arrives, and they discuss taping the drugs to her leg. She insists on retrieving her lucky hat. As Henry backs out, the FBI arrests him. Karen flushes heroin and hides a gun. During interrogation, Henry sees Sandy has also been arrested. Karen bails Henry out. Fearing for his life, he plans to sell the remaining drugs and disappear. However, Karen flushed them, leading to an argument. They fall asleep, Henry clutching a gun. Henry visits Polly, apologizes for his drug involvement, and admits lying. Polly gives him $3,000 and tells him to leave the life. Karen refuses to hide, but Henry insists they must leave. Jimmy asks Karen about Henry and says he needs to speak with him. Overwhelmed, Karen is comforted when Jimmy offers her money and directs her to a store. However, Karen begins to sense something is wrong and decides not to enter the store, fearing for her safety. The tension between Henry and Karen grows, and Henry chooses to meet Jimmy at a diner. During their conversation, Jimmy asks Henry to go to Florida to handle someone who betrayed them by informing the authorities. Henry quickly realizes that if he goes to Florida, he probably won't return alive. Ultimately, he makes the decision to cooperate with the FBI and testify against his former associates. Henry and Karen sit together at the FBI office discussing their new lives under the Witness Protection Program. They express worries about their new location. Henry doesn't want to live somewhere cold, and Karen is concerned about how the children will continue their education. Agent McDonald reassures them that the FBI will take care of those issues. Meanwhile, in Gefkin's bar, Paulie is arrested by FBI agents, marking another blow to the crime family. The scene shifts to a courtroom where Henry reflects on how easily he and his family managed to disappear, as everything was registered under different aliases. He laments leaving behind the life of crime, reminiscing about the wealth and influence they once enjoyed. Jimmy and Paulie are sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. The scene then moves to a quiet street in a Midwestern town where Henry now lives. He complains about the monotony, the lack of excitement, and the poor quality of the food. As he retrieves a bottle of milk and the newspaper from his doorstep, he explains how he's been arrested. He says he's been locked up for a year and now considers himself just an ordinary nobody, resigned to living the rest of his life like a simpleton.